Here, this native of Iceland who has won some rather remarkable reviews in terms of people talking. If you are not as familiar with her work as I suspect most people are familiar, here is what Steve Greenlee in the Boston Globe said. The most consistently inventive, exciting music of the past decade has been made by Björk. Her tunes are rooted in the past, yet advance the entire genre of pop music. They shimmer with sweetness and innocence, and they scare the hell out of you. They're melodically lovely and violently happy. Each time she releases a new CD, it evokes a reaction, so this is what music is going to sound like in a few years. Yet here it is. Ben Ratliff of the New York Times, her sound as a singer, that is to say her personality, phrasing, timbre, accent, the melodic adornment she uses on any and all songs is overwhelming and stubbornly her own. It reduces everything else going on around it to something much less consequential. It is her singing. What else do you need to know? That's rather
I go shy. Definitely go shy.
You do go shy, don't you?
Yeah.
Oh, I love, but my baby just loves to dance. He wants to dance, he loves to dance, he got to dance. So I love, but my baby just loves to dance. Oh, I love, but I
Björk was born in Reykjavik in 1965 and grew up surrounded by the raw, primal landscape of Iceland, but in a culture which was rapidly embracing modernity. She came from an artistic family, and at the age of 5, she was sent to classical music school.
Þeir sem fyrsti vissu fæðingu Jesúbarnsins voru vitringarnir 3 frá Austurlöndum, Kaspar, Melkíor og Baltasar. Þeir spáðu þessum atburði eftir gömlum ritum og stöðu stjarnar.
They sent me to classical music school when I was 5, and I was there for 10 years. It was very conservative, but I was a bit of a rebel. I would do my own little projects in the corner. They were all trying to teach me about German classical music, and I couldn't relate to it and felt like I was being force-fed with tradition, and that wasn't mine. And so very early on, I was I think it was not only me, it was also Icelandic people who were of my generation were craving for an Icelandic music, an Icelandic sound, and an Icelandic, somebody who would express Icelandic reality, and it would be taken seriously. Because Icelandic music had this kind of minority complex that that it was only good if it was from abroad. And I sort of strived with my headmaster at school. He would call me in his office and we would kind of have these debates, and I disagreed with how his school was organized, and it was kind of not designed to make people, the students, give and flourish and bring things out of them. It was kind of more designed to force things inside them.
Yeah.
And I didn't agree with that, and I thought we had a lot to say and a lot to give.
Björk was always singing as a child, and at the age of 11 she was persuaded to release an album of cover songs. It made her a child star in Iceland, but it wasn't a record she was proud of.
I've been singing professionally more or less since I was about 11, 12.
Góði Guð falei mömmu frá, hún háttar mig og baðar og mér hjá, svo klæðir hún mig í náttföt hlý, Guð blessi pappa, ég gleymdi því.
It's a small town and people knew I did gigs, I played flute, I sang, and then this guy wanted to make a children's record. It sold 5,000 copies, which is gold in Iceland. But then they wanted to do. Then it came out in the record company, and the record company was like, they wanted to do another one, but I didn't want to. I felt funny about having an album out that said Björk on it, and it wasn't my work. It was. I'd been collaborating and wrote just one song, but I sort of promised to myself that I would never do that again unless I felt it was my album, not just something I fronted. People recognized me in the street and my school. I got much more attention than I wanted before I asked for it, where I think a lot of people don't get the attention till long after they want it. So I immediately sorted out in my head that that's not what I want. I want to make music. I think the biggest influence Iceland has had on my music is organic. This thing with 22-hour daylight in the summer and darkness in the winter is absolutely normal. And icebergs and eruptions and no trees at all is the way it should be. Iceland probably affected a lot how I sing, because I did spend a lot of time as a kid in nature. The way I sang would just form itself. It was definitely not influenced by other singers. Just walking outside to school or maybe in blizzards. This harbor is probably my roots, you know, and the weather and the mountains. For me, this is the heart of Reykjavik. Just the fact that like all my family 1,000 years back are Icelandic, and I was born here with all those things inside me, and with that face and this body, you know, and with these influences, I think that's enough. I don't have to. It's so much subconsciously there. I don't have to focus on it consciously as well. But yeah, there is a big chunk there. It's been quite a mad century for Iceland, because like 100 years ago, my grandparents' generation, they were brought up in like mud houses. The lifestyle was like Middle Ages, you know? And then we became independent in 1944, and we became, after World War II, like I think the 5th richest country in the world or something, like really quickly. It developed in maybe 80 years what, say, England has developed in 400 years. It's so quick that it's almost violent. Iceland was a colony for 600 or 700 years, and it was treated very badly by the Danish. And we were not allowed to play music and dance. It was supposed to be an act from the devil or something. And so what we got obsessed with was storytelling. And the sagas, you know, that's all our culture is basically literature, very literature-based. Probably the most important music in Iceland was half talking and half singing, kind of chanting.
Hreiðrum ganga fuglar frá, flöktan dranga bjarga, sólar vanga syngja hjá, sálma langa og marga. Björk, she uses her voice in a very specific way. There is a specific sound in her voice, and you can say the same about the voice of the old Icelandic choirmen who were reciting the rímur. It's not a singing voice, not exactly. It's not a speaking voice. It's somewhere in between.
The women of the sagas were very strong, and Björk is one of them. It is said about the Icelanders that they are bold in art. They do not calculate the steps. If I do this today, this will happen tomorrow. They do today what they have to do today. All that's very Icelandic, because we live with this nature and the elements that we have to defy all the time. We are not thinking about it every day, but it forms our character, of course.
I think when you come from a place where nature can kill, I mean, you could literally not be here in a week. That sort of makes you humble, and I think it's healthy. It puts you in your place.
When the punk movement arrived in Iceland, Björk was 14 years old and already singing in bands.
It became quite an explosion. And I remember a couple of years where everybody were in a band, like everyone. So it was a crazy period.
Ow! Takk fyrir, takk fyrir.
Raka séð annan eins fyrst í kyrstu. Ég hef aldrei séð annan eins bíl. Ég hef aldrei séð annan eins fyrst í kyrstu. Ég hef aldrei séð annan eins í skáp.
And then it just kind of came out that when I started being in bands, because I was so kind of obsessed with new things getting made, that I kind of ended up just being on the microphone, you know, but it was very natural process.
The renaissance of Icelandic music was happening in 79-80, and so that scene was has been called the Icelandic punk scene, because that scene, it was like so much do-it-yourself. It was not like a political thing like right-wing or left-wing or anything like that. We were singing in Icelandic and we were dealing with Icelandic reality, and we were putting out our records and doing basically everything ourselves.
It was, you know, very stupid local sense of humor. Bunch of 16-year-old terrorists drinking absinthe that we smuggled from Spain and writing terrible tunes and being arrested a lot of times and having art exhibitions and making our own films and basically our sort of terrorism, if you want, sort of sabotaging what we thought was really snotty. I think the people that ended up forming Cook and the Sugarcubes, Bad Taste, they were bound to meet, you know, because in such a small town, having same obsession, basically being terrified of mediocrity. The problem that had yet to be solved when punk happened in Iceland was to define what it was to be Icelandic. It was a question of not forgetting about nature, how important that is, not forget about the mythology that we have, that is very strong in our culture. I think all of it went together in quite an explosive pot.
Go
The girl has a voice like an ice pick, such a pure sound. When the Sugarcubes played with U2, I would be preparing in the dressing room, and even if I couldn't hear the band, I couldn't hear anything. You know, I could just hear this low rumble through these, you know, stadium walls or wherever we happened to be playing. Could always seem to hear that voice. It seemed to travel through metal and concrete and glass and, you know, 50,000 punters, and I, you know, just went straight to my heart. What can I tell you?
I first heard Birthday on college radio. It was just unique and exciting, and it was, you know, one of those songs you hear and you have no idea what it is or where it came from.
Björk singing Birthday, there's something unearthly about it. It's just so excessive and wild, and it just kind of goes against the grain of the music.
I think of her voice as not quite human. She had to be a really bad girl. She had to be really out to lunch to be sort of coming up with words like that. It sounds totally out of control, her voice, but it's not at all. You know, there's a sense in the voice of a tiny kid who's very, very childlike, but very brutal. It's this insane sort of innocence.
Somebody told me that Birthday had been chosen single of the week in Melody Maker, and my response was, oh shit, because I knew it was trouble. And boy, it did prove out to be trouble for us.
There was like companies that came here and got offered us 60 trillion billions, and we just told them all, you know, to F-U-C-K off, because we were being terrorists and all that. And that took about 1.5 years that we just kept sending them back.
The agenda of the Sugarcubes was never to become like world famous. We were doing this for fun. The trappings of the business, I think, were the end of the Sugarcubes. We just had enough, and we were all friends. And so instead of spoiling a very good friendship, we destroyed a business relationship.
As much as intellectually, it was very, very stimulating to hang out with poets and authors. Musically, it just wasn't challenging anymore for me.
Björk had been building up a collection of songs in her head since she was a little girl. She had given them to some Icelandic brass players to arrange, but was looking for a way to realise their full potential.
And I thought, it started to become obvious to me that I was being a coward, hiding my songs.
A coward?
Yeah.
Because you were scared to test them, to see if there was an audience or to see if people would like them or what?
Well, I was just having the best life a person can have because I was living in Iceland, which start off with is, for me, like paradise on earth.
Why is that?
It's just got this gorgeous combination of a completely rural, raw nature and then the modern things that you need. It's perfectly balanced. And then all my friends and all the people I loved and I known since I was born were living like in a 5-minute walk radius around me.
Yeah.
I had a little house, cook meals for people, and we would drink wine, and then once in a while I would tour the world with the Sugarcubes, and it would be just right. And then I realized that these songs that I've been writing since I was a child, when I go on my walks, and always just kept them as my own private sanctuary, like to sort of remain sane kind of thing, that I had to kind of, I guess, share them. Because once in a while I would be alone at night and open a book, or I would get a craving that I couldn't understand, and it would be sort of satisfied with the right film or with the right book or with the right CD. And I would slowly start to read the back of the things and realize that actually the people who made those things, they sort of sacrificed almost everything to be able to give these things to me. So there I was sitting in my comfortable armchair, having the most gorgeous life one can think. And when I needed that sort of craving satisfied, I was just reach out for the right book or something. And I was almost 26 at that time, and I felt it was my time to make that sort of a risk.